Hi everyone! I don't know if you can tell, but I'm wearing my Minnie Mouse or Mickey Mouse ears, and I've got my Minnie Mouse dress on. And today I thought we'd go with a little themed reading. Today we're going to read 5-minute fairy tales starring Mickey and Minnie. Mickey and the Beanstalk. Long, long ago, there was a place called Happy Valley where the sun shone every day. High on a hill overlooking the valley stood a castle. Inside were many beautiful things, but the most beautiful of all was a golden harp with the face of an angel. Its sweet music cast a spell of peace over the whole valley. One day, a mysterious shadow darkened the valley. When it went away, the harp had disappeared. Soon, the people who lived there grew sad and hungry, especially Farmer Mickey, Farmer Donald, and Farmer Goofy. When they had nothing left to eat, they decided to trade their cow for food. But on his way to the market, Mickey met an old man. "Where are you off to?" asked the man. "To sell my cow," Mickey explained. The man looked at the cow. "I'll buy her," he said, "for these 3 magic beans. If you plant them under a full moon, they will grow right up to the sky." Farmer Mickey was curious, and there was a full moon that night, so he agreed. When Mickey returned home, he showed Donald and Goofy the beans. "3 beans!" they cried. "We can't live on 3 beans!" Donald grabbed the beans and threw them on the ground. They bounced once, twice, and finally through a hole in the floor. The 3 farmers went to bed that night, hungrier than ever. Then, as the full moon rose, something strange happened. The beans sprouted a stalk that grew and grew and grew, carrying the farmer's little house with it. When the farmers awoke, they looked out the window. Happy Valley was gone. They were in a strange land above the clouds. Mickey pointed to a giant castle. "Maybe he'll share." The farmers ran to the castle, and sure enough, there were huge bowls of food sitting on the table. "Let's eat," they cried, eagerly digging in. Soon, the farmers were too full to eat another bite. Suddenly, they heard a voice coming from the trunk in the table. It was the golden harp. "A wicked giant stole me and brought me here to sing him to sleep," she explained. Just then, the room started shaking. "Fee, fi, fo, fum," thundered a voice. The giant was coming. Mickey, Donald, and Goofy had to hide. They leaped behind a sugar bowl as fast as they could. The giant began to make a sandwich, and as the farmers scampered to find a new hiding place, Mickey got trapped inside the bread. The giant's eyes grew wide as he opened his mouth to take a bite. "Oh, gotcha!" the giant cried, grabbing Mickey. Then he scooped up Donald and Goofy too. He dropped all 3 of them in the same trunk he kept the golden harp in. But Mickey slipped out just in time before the giant had locked the box. Grinning, the giant slipped the key into his pocket. He had no idea that Mickey was free. By now, the giant was asleep. He wanted the harp to sing him to sleep. He placed her on a table, and within seconds he was snoring noisily. This was Mickey's chance. He carefully reached into the giant's pocket and pulled out a key. As quickly as he could, he let his friends out of the box and picked up the harp. "Let's get out of here," cried Mickey. The giant opened one eye. "Come back!" he roared, leaping up. But the farmers didn't stop. "You can't catch us," Mickey called. The ground shook as the giant chased them, but the farmers kept going down the beanstalk as fast as they could. Donald and Goofy reached the ground first and began to saw the gigantic stem. At last, the beanstalk started to wobble. Then it began to lean. Finally, it fell to the ground with a deafening thud. The giant was never to be seen again. With the giant gone, the farmers returned the harp to her home in the castle on the hill. Farmer Mickey, Farmer Donald, and Farmer Goofy were heroes, and Happy Valley was a cheerful place once again. Mickey, Minnie, and the Gingerbread House. Once upon a time, there lived a poor apprentice named Mickey. He worked for the village blacksmith. The work was hard, and the blacksmith was very mean. The only reason Mickey stayed was because he was in love with Minnie, who lived next door. Minnie was also very poor. She worked for the baker, who was just as angry and mean as the blacksmith. The blacksmith and the baker had once been wealthy, that means they were rich, and kind, that means they were nice. But a witch had stolen their hearts along with their fortunes. Now they made Mickey and Minnie work very long hours, and they never seemed happy with anything. Mickey and Minnie remembered how nice the blacksmith and baker had been and kept hoping they would be again, but nothing changed. One day, Mickey came up with a plan. He asked Minnie to run away with him, and she agreed. Mickey promised her that their lives would be better. That night, Mickey and Minnie stole away from their homes. They trudged through the forest for hours and hours. They were very tired and very hungry. They were about to stop and rest when Minnie saw something in the distance. "Look, Mickey, a cottage!" Minnie exclaimed. As they got closer, Mickey and Minnie both gasped. The house was made of gingerbread. "Do you think we could eat part of it?" Minnie wondered. "I'm so hungry." "Sure," said Mickey, tasting a piece of windowsill. It was made of sugar. He eagerly took another bite. Then the cottage door squeaked open, and a smiling old woman stepped out. Come in. You must be tired and hungry," she said, kindly ushering them in with a warm, friendly smile. That night, the woman made the most wonderful meal out of the two apprentices had ever tasted. There was turkey and fresh vegetables, followed by all sorts of cakes and pies. As soon as they were done, she gave them seconds, and as soon as they were finished with those, she gave them thirds. The enormous meal had made their stomachs full and happy. Their eyelids grew heavy and tired. "You must be sleepy. Why don't you please be my guests and rest here tonight?" the old woman said. She took them up to a cozy bedroom and tucked each of them into a comfortable bed. Before they knew it, Mickey and Minnie were fast asleep. But as soon as Mickey woke up the next morning, he knew something was very wrong. He was locked in an iron cage, and Minnie had been put to work mixing dough in the kitchen. The old woman who had seemed so gentle the night before had become bitter and cruel. She wagged a finger at Mickey and cackled, "Once I've fattened you up, you will make a tasty pie." Mickey couldn't believe it. The old woman had tricked them. She was really a mean old witch. "Get to work! Knead the dough!" the witch yelled at Minnie. Then, as soon as Minnie was finished, the old woman ordered her to do something else. "Light the oven!" Minnie had never done that before. "The baker always lit the oven herself," she told the witch. "Ah, yes, the baker," the old woman said, laughing. There was a wicked gleam in her eyes. "Did she and the blacksmith and their fortunes and their hearts miss their fortunes and their hearts very much?" she asked. "You're the witch who stole kindness and fortune from the blacksmith and the baker," Mickey cried. Minnie cried. Minnie knew she had to do something. She waited until the witch's back was turned. Then she ran up and pushed her from behind. The witch fell into the cold oven, and Minnie quickly slammed the door. Minnie hurried to free Mickey, and together they shoved a table up against the oven door. With the witch safely trapped inside, they could get away at last. But first, they went into the witch's attic and found the hearts and fortunes that she had stolen from the blacksmith and the baker. They hurried home and returned everything to the blacksmith and the baker, who were overjoyed. And so the baker and the blacksmith, Mickey and Minnie, all lived happily ever after, with glad hearts and good fortunes. Little Red Riding Minnie. Once upon a time, there was a kind-hearted girl who was loved by all who knew her. Her grandmother had made her a cape of red wool as a gift. The girl wore it so often that everyone called her Little Red Riding Minnie. One day, Little Red Riding Minnie learned that her grandmother was sick with a cold, so she decided to bake a batch of her famous chocolate chip cookies for her. As soon as the cookies had cooled, Little Red Riding Minnie put them in a tin. She packed a bunch of super strong menthol cough drops in another tin, knowing that her grandmother could probably use those too. Then Little Red Riding Minnie put both tins in her basket and set for her grandmother's house. The route to her grandmother's house took Little Red Riding Minnie right down Main Street, through the center of town. Little Red Riding Minnie loved saying hello to the shopkeepers as she cheerfully passed their stores. Then, just as she passed the post office, who should be there and jump out but Big Bad Pete? "Hello, Red," he said, "and where might you be heading with that basket?" Now, Big Bad Pete was known as a scoundrel, and he was about the last person Little Red Riding Minnie had wanted to run into. But Little Red Riding Minnie tried to be polite to everyone, even Big Bad Pete. "Well, if you must know," Little Red Riding Minnie replied, hugging her basket tightly, "I'm bringing some of my famous chocolate chip cookies to my grandmother who has a bad cold. Now, if you'll excuse me." And with that, she hurried on. But as Bad Pete watched her go, his mouth began to water. Little Red Riding Minnie's cookies were famous and famously delicious. So, while Little Red Riding Minnie continued down the main street, Big Bad Pete ducked into an alley and raced along the back streets. He arrived at Grandmother's house way ahead of Little Red Riding Minnie. Now he just needed a plan. As he hurried up the front walk, Big Bad Pete spotted Grandmother's wash hanging out to dry. He thought. Minutes later, Little Red Riding Minnie skipped to her grandmother's door. Before Little Red Riding Minnie could even knock, Big Bad Pete jumped out from behind a bush disguised in her grandmother's clothing. "Oh, hello, Little Red Riding Minnie," he squeaked. "Have you come to pay me a visit?" "Why, yes," Little Red Riding Minnie stammered. Grandmother's cold must be very bad, she thought. She looks absolutely awful. But then, when Little Red Riding Minnie began to notice something, "Oh, Grandmother, what big ears you have!" "All the better to hear you with, my dear," Big Bad Pete replied in his high, funny voice. "And what big eyes you have," said Little Red Riding Minnie. Big Bad Pete crept closer. "All the better to see you with," he said. "And what big teeth you have," said Little Red Riding Minnie. Big Bad Pete moved even closer. "All the better to eat your famous chocolate chip cookies with," he shouted. And with that, he snatched the tin right out of her basket and threw off his disguise. "I tricked you. Now your cookies are all mine," cried Big Bad Pete. As Little Red Riding watched, he tore off the cover of the tin and emptied its entire contents into his mouth. Too bad for Big Bad Pete. It was the wrong tin. It only took a few seconds for the super strong menthol cough drops to work their magic. Soon Big Bad Pete's face turned pink and his eyes got very large, and he ran away from the house, desperate to find water. Just then, Little Red Riding Minnie's grandmother opened the door. "Oh, hello, dear," she said as she dabbed her nose with a handkerchief. "Is everything all right?" "Oh, yes, Grandmother," Little Red Riding Minnie replied. "Everything is just fine." So Little Red Riding Minnie had a pleasant visit with her grandmother, who enjoyed the chocolate chip cookies very much. And then, knowing her grandmother was much better, she skipped happily home.